Hello, everyone, and welcome to the full-time MBA webinar for today at Smith School of Business at Queen's University. It's a pleasure to be with you. We have a special session today. It's a masterclass with a company that has a long-standing relationship with Smith School of Business and the full-time MBA at MITmaster, talking specifically about some training that you could utilize for prepping yourself for the GMAT or GRE test that's possibly part of your consideration as you look forward to applying to an MBA program. My name is Geoff Coons, and I'm the Associate Director of the full-time MBA program here at Smith. I'm going to give you about 15 minutes, a very fast overview of the full-time MBA program. There's my email address on the screen. I will show my school's webpage at the end of the presentation. Feel free to reach out at any time if there's anything that's not covered in the next 15 minutes. Some good news for us. The full-time MBA program at Smith School of Business continues to be ranked very highly as a part of the Global Financial Times ranking. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. We remain a top 100 program in the world. We're also ranked #1 in Canada for several key variables. And in this competitive marketplace, it's important to know that you're getting top return on that investment for an MBA program. We're also #1 in salary increase. So that's the salary that you're earning now in comparison to the salary that you earn after the program. We've been #1 in career services for the last 6 years. Our students continue to enjoy great relationships with their coach, with our Career Advancement Center. And of course, overall career advancement through the years. Our students continue to move on into the alumni phase and to ascend the ladder of leadership within their chosen organizations. So lots of positive aspects on this slide for you to consider and absorb. Our program is offered in the home of Queen's University, Kingston, Ontario. There's a photo of me in the bottom left-hand corner of the slide with some alumni on their graduation day. We are known, certainly nationally, as one of the top university towns in Canada. When you think of Kingston, you often think of Queens. The snow's starting to melt for those of you that are listening to this webinar from non-snow locations. The spring, summer, and fall are beautiful times of year to be in Kingston. It's a great place to live, work, and study. And most of our students walk to campus within a 10, 15-minute radius of our pedestrian-friendly campus here at Queen's. And that yellow arrow indicates where Goods Hall is located on the Queen's University campus. And you can see the larger scan of our beautiful historic downtown on the shores of the St. Lawrence River and Lake Ontario. We're about a 10-minute walk from our historic downtown, full of great historic sites, restaurants, bars, cultural attractions, sporting amenities. You'll feel very comfortable here very quickly. And I know that students that move to Kingston for their MBA year often fall in love with the small town charm and the university town feel that we offer. We also offer in our classroom a modern methodology that brings technical expertise and interpersonal skills together. And these are the ways that which we deliver that. Class instruction and discussion. We have a smaller classroom theater just adjacent to my office here at Goods Hall, where you'll be meeting with your smaller cohort. Several of our students every year talk about the importance of working together in a collaborative space with a smaller footprint of students, and they sincerely enjoy the relationships that they build during the MBA experience and that take with them beyond the year. I often get asked at sessions, fairs, information sessions, interviews, whether or not we offer case-based methodology in our deliverables. We certainly do. There are plenty of courses with a good balance of traditional instruction and case-based content. We integrate that into much of what we do in our core subjects and our elective courses. The work that we do is simulated. There are real-world business projects where you can actually, apply this to real-world concepts, working with clients on a problem, challenge, or opportunity that they're facing. Experiential learning is learning by doing, and that's actually pushing away from a textbook or a screen or a case and actually applying it to something real. And I know that Smith School of Business, better than anyone that I know, certainly brings all of these pieces together in that modern pedagogy in the way an MBA is delivered. We're also known nationally and growing globally as the MBA of teams. It certainly mirrors today's progressive workplace. So when you join the MBA program each year in January, you're put on an academic team for the core content, those business fundamental courses. There's a photo of a team from last year's cohort. As you can see from their faces, very diverse teams, culturally, academically, and professionally. The person opposite you is nothing like you in a lot of different ways. And we do that deliberately so that you're learning and supporting one another through that experience. And the feedback from our students and future alumni indicate that these opportunities, these skills are transferable into what comes next after the MBA program and allows you to continue to work effectively in collaborative spaces in the real world in multiple different industries. Student experience, something that we're known for as well. There is a good scan of the size of our cohort. Again, you're going to know those other 79 people by name. They're going to know you and build those relationships and friendships for life. Lots of great ways for you to expand what you're doing beyond just academics in class. Student government, clubs and events that you can do all year long, both on and off campus. Case competitions are very popular in MBA programs. We do a lot of great internal ones. We created a national case competition 1 year ago with other Canadian business schools. That was a big success. We're bringing that back this year. And of course, our students also travel nationally, sometimes internationally for case competitions. Career search and networking on that number one in Canada slide that I shared a moment ago. We are the best at career search and networking. We teach you how to do it, and you build those great professional relationships that can help create those post-MBA career opportunities. Industry-specific training. As I deliver this at 1:06 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, our MBA students are in the classroom right now learning more about the management consulting industry. Very competitive space, and I'm sure many of you out there listening are considering a career in management consulting. We also have auxiliary training in finance and in product management, marketing, lots of different ways for you to try on different hats and to learn about those industries beyond the program. Fit to lead, that's a great opportunity for you to stretch your legs, get your heart and lungs, and move your limbs a little bit after sitting in an MBA experience. You can get out and participate in individual or team-based physical fitness activities. Could be something as simple as playing some basketball or volleyball or a racket sport. You can get involved in intramural activity on campus. I mentioned the close proximity to our waterfront. Our students love to go sailing and kayaking and canoeing during the better weather. We're also known for our ice skating and our hockey, so maybe that's an interest of yours as well. The full complement of what you do as an MBA student involves a little bit of physical fitness, health and wellness, proper nutrition. Community engagement. You'd expect Queen's students to be closely connected to the Kingston campus, Kingston city as a whole. It's a great opportunity for our students to show their leadership in a lot of different volunteer aspects in our city. New this year, internship opportunities. A student can select doing an internship track as a part of their MBA experience in the full-time MBA. It's an optional opportunity, but a lot of companies are looking at adding an internship component to their onboarding process. So Smith is certainly seeing that value and wanting to bring that forward for our future students to be able to continue to find those connections in industry. So these are just a small sample of some of the amazing things that you can do during your 1 year, a very busy year, but a very fulfilling year on campus. There are our fees, domestic and international. It is an all-inclusive fee. And as this slide says, there is no application fee. We don't take $1 from you until you enroll in the program and accept your offer of admission. Some schools do have hidden costs. I'm not going to lie, so I encourage you to ask those questions. We offer a very transparent, collaborative experience, and we want our applicants to have a full scope of what's waiting for them. So that fee includes tuition, all of your books, case studies, that's all delivered directly to your team room physically here at Goods Hall. All exclusive MBA resource centers like career coaching, executive coaching, Fit to Lead is all included in that. If you participate in case competitions, your registration, travel, and accommodations are covered. We also offer travel stipends for our frequent trips to Toronto for when we go there for a Career Advancement Center activity. How do we measure the ideal candidate? Well, four buckets, as we call them. Going clockwise from the top left, you got to be smart. We will look at your intellectual horsepower. So that, of course, means your GPA from your undergrad, uh, maybe your GMAT score or GRE. My colleague Sergey is going to be talking about that shortly. That's a key variable in the first category. Work experience is critical for a full-time MBA at Smith. So 2 years is our minimum. 4 or 5 is our annual average with a soft ceiling of 8 or 9 years. We will be looking at your progress as a young professional. Have you been promoted? Are you client facing? Are you managing major projects? Your references are part of that category. Still pretty standard as to what most MBA programs will be looking for. Hopping down to the bottom right, coachability and team. So we're looking for your ability to work collaboratively with others. Can you coach others and be coached yourself, not make the same mistake twice? Are you working effectively in a collaborative environment in things like sports, music, theater, community service? If you like working in those spaces, tell those stories and how that relates to academics and working collaboratively with others. Finally, my favorite, the so-called soft skills. I think of them more as durable skills, emotional intelligence, or interpersonal skills. Your effectiveness in building relationships. Can you cross the floor with confidence and build rapport and connection with other people? Are you a good presenter at the front of the room? Can you command attention and argue effectively? Cultural sensitivity, appropriate sense of humor in the workplace. These are all critical variables. If you can show effectiveness and strength in each of these categories, you're going to get into the program, you're going to do well in the program, and you're going to get a great job after the program because we built this application and admissions process based on what global employers are looking for. Next up is how do you meet those requirements? So Beth McCallum is the application advisor for the full-time MBA. She is on your side. When you begin your process, Beth will reach out to you to provide that preliminary assessment of what she sees in your profile. She will guide you every step of the way through the process and help you take your case file to the admissions committee for review. And this is what we're looking for. We will be looking for that bachelor's degree, so your official transcripts can be sent directly to Beth. B plus average in the last 2 years would be a key point that would stand out. Work experience. The resume that we'll ask you for, most candidates have that minimum of 2 years of postgraduate experience, 3 to 5 range, top 8 or 9 on the soft level. We'd like to see that demonstrated in your updated resume and cover letter. GMAT, Sergey is going to talk more about that shortly. Minimum 565 GMAT focus or 600 equivalent in their original edition would be a good target score. We do have scores in the 700 range. We do have scores in the high 5 range. But that 600 window is a good meaty part of the curve if you're looking for an area to target. A GRE score is also accepted. We accept both equally. We don't have a preference. Sometimes applicants have a preference as to which standardized test they pick. English proficiency. So if your undergraduate degree was not delivered in English, we will ask for a TOEFL or an IELTS as a part of that process. Got about a minute to go before I turn the virtual microphone over to Sergey. So there's our website, smithqueens.com/MBA. If you click on that website, there'll be a button that says introduce yourself, fill out that form, and Beth will reach out to you within a business day to get the process started. It is a rolling admissions basis for the admissions committee. We do a lot of recruiting from February to December every year. We don't do a lot in January, mainly because we keep our focus on the incoming cohort and getting them on their feet and getting the full-time MBA started. So you are right in the heart of recruitment season for our MBA program, and we really look forward to building those connections and taking that relationship forward. Lots of great opportunities to follow us on social media. Always great content there at some of the popular channels. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen. And now I am going to introduce a close colleague and friend. This is Sergey Kouk from the AdmitMaster company. If any of you listening go to MBA fairs across Canada, chances are you'll run into AdmitMaster in the lobby of the hotel where we have those fairs. Sergey, I see you all the time. I've seen you in Toronto, and I know our paths will cross as 2026 continues to unfold. So, a quick accolade for Sergey. Many Smith MBA students and alumni have talked about the value of AdmitMaster's presence in their application file and helping them achieve great scores in their MBA pursuits and allowed them to get, in some cases, further progression in their career search and further progression in their pursuit of scholarships. So, highly recommend AdmitMaster. Over to you, Sergey, to take our listeners through a masterclass.
Thank you so much, Geoff. Can everybody hear me okay?
Good to go on my end.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks so much, Geoff. Okay, great. Yes, so first of all, it's always a pleasure to collaborate with the Smith School of Business. We worked together for many years by now. I think it's probably more than 10 years. And we have many, many clients who went to Smith and changed their lives, maybe started from the job that wasn't entirely satisfying. You may be working as a like a nurse or engineer, and then getting to work into consulting firms, private equity firms, some of the top companies like Amazon and Google. So certainly, the opportunity for you to change your life through a program such as Smith is out there for you to take. Not everybody will get in, and that's why there's the application process. And even though there's no application fee, the process is still competitive, and you definitely want to make sure that you're well prepared for the MBA program, well prepared for the application. And to be honest with you, the program itself is, of course, quite an intensive learning experience, because this is going to be an experience and a journey of personal transformation. And I'm also happy to always see how the Smith MBA program evolves, and especially now with the addition of that internship opportunity, is just it makes it even so much more valuable. And of course, if you've never been to Kingston and you want to experience what it's like to be in the university town, then please reach out to Geoff and make sure that you schedule a trip. There are some scheduled trips for everybody to come, and there are also individual trips that you can organize and sit in a class. As part of the application process, you would probably want to submit a GMAT or the GRE. Today, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the GMAT than the GRE, but the process is very similar. Geoff was mentioning that you might decide which test is better for you. I will talk a little bit about how you can actually decide that. And if you would like to get in touch with me after this seminar, then please send me an email, give me a call. You can go on our website, admitmaster.com, as well. So here's what we're going to be talking about over the next 40 minutes or so. We'll just very briefly talk about what is the GMAT, and I'll tell you what's the difference between the GMAT and the GRE. I'll show you examples of some of the strategies from different types of questions that you will see on the GMAT. We'll talk a bit about what actually will help you get that top score and what separates top scores from low scores. My objective here will be today not to teach you everything about the GMAT, just simply because it's impossible to do so in 40 minutes. But I would like to make sure that you leave today with a plan, that you're not just here to kind of gather information and not do anything with it. You can have a specific step-by-step plan that you can follow. We'll talk about the resources that you could use to prepare for the GMAT as well. So let's talk briefly about what is the GMAT. The GMAT is a graduate management admission test. It's been offered for over 70 years by now. And right now we are in the 11th edition of the GMAT, what's also known as the GMAT Focus Edition or the 2024 GMAT, which is when it was offered for the first time, this edition. It is a fairly short test, only 2 hours and 15 minutes, which is actually quite similar to the GRE. That's also approximately 2 hours. The GMAT consists of 3 sections: quantitative reasoning, verbal reasoning, and data insights. Each section is 45 minutes long. You have approximately 20 questions per section, so it's about 2 minutes per question. You can take this exam in any order. You're going to have one 10-minute break between either the first or the second, or the second and the third section. The quantitative reasoning section assesses your problem-solving skills, so it's essentially dealing with math, but not necessarily in a way that we're used to. It's about being able to look at the math problem from more of a managerial perspective, more of a higher level perspective, and I'll show you what I mean by that. The verbal reasoning is more about your critical reasoning and your reading comprehension skills. It's your ability to read the text, understand some critical information about this text, and answering some questions. And data insights is a section that's assessing your data literacy skills. Now, the way the GMAT works is all of 3 of these sections will have individual scores. These scores will be on a scale of 60 to 90. And all 3 of these sections will then be combined for the total score. The total score is 205 to 805. As you could see, 205 or 805 is not the sum of 60 to 90. So the way that the total scores are calculated is by comparing your performance with that of other people who are doing this test. And you're getting compared against everybody who did this test in the past 5 years. Based on how you perform compared to them, you're going to be assigned a score for each section, and then combined the score for all 3 sections together, and that will become your total score. And this is what Geoff was talking about when he said the score of 565 would be the minimum that you should target. And that, by the way, is above the average for the GMAT of everybody who takes the test. Unlike the GMAT, the GRE has 5 sections. There is no break. There are 2 math sections, 2 verbal sections, and 1 essay. On the GRE, you actually have a little bit less time per question. So on average, you have about a minute 20 to a minute 30 seconds per question on the GRE. And as I mentioned, there is an essay on the GRE and there's none on the GMAT. In terms of the types of questions you are going to see, there are actually 8 different types of questions. Today, we won't have time to look at all of them, but I will show you examples of one question type from each of the sections. In fact, in the quantitative reasoning section, which is one of the sections, you're going to have one question type, and that is problem solving. In the verbal section, you're going to have 2, which is critical reasoning and reading comprehension. And in data insights, you're going to have 5, and actually one of them is data sufficiency. If you would like to know a bit more about these types of questions, then please join me in our longer seminar. Our next verbal refresher seminar is going to be on March 18th. The next math refresher seminar is going to be on March 31st, where we're going to tackle questions from both data insights and quantitative reasoning. And if you head on to admitmaster.com, you can actually sign up for these classes, and they are, again, free. They are there to help you break the ice on the GMAT and really start understanding and learning these strategies. An important aspect also that I wanted to mention is that the GMAT is a computer adaptive test. So what does that mean? That means that the difficulty of the questions will continue to change as you progress through each of the sections. People who are making a lot of mistakes will tend to have a lot of easy questions on the test. People who tend to answer the questions correctly will get a lot of hard questions on the test, but dealing with a lot of hard questions will, of course, lead to a higher score. Now the test continues to adapt all throughout the section. So the GMAT might give you some easy questions, some hard questions. It essentially tries to challenge you in a variety of different ways. And based on your overall performance, it assigns you a score. The GRE works a little bit differently. On the GRE, there are two math sections and two verbal sections. So depending on how you perform on the first section, the difficulty of the second section is going to be adjusted. So in this way, the GRE is a little bit less forgiving, because if you don't do well on the first section, there is no way that you can get a high score on the GRE. Whereas on the GMAT, if you start not very strongly, you could still recover. So it's a bit more forgiving that way. So what about the types of questions that you're going to see? Well, let's have a look. Here's a typical example of a question from the quantitative reasoning section. Problem solving. I'll let you read this question first, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, well, it seems a bit confusing, right? Especially because we're not really given any numbers here. Aaron will jog from home at X miles an hour, then walk back home by the same route at Y miles an hour. How many miles from home can Aaron jog so that he spends a total of T hours jogging and walking? Really? Is that what you're expecting me to do if I'm trying to get into a business school? Oh, you know what? The GMAT is a multiple choice test. So would you like to see the answer choices? Maybe they're going to help. Maybe you look at the answer choice and like, of course. Now things become a lot more manageable. Well, let's have a look at the answer choices. Not really something we expected, right? Seems like we have some variables, basically, or just a bunch of formulas. So how can we expect the GMAT to ask us these kinds of questions if we've been out of school for some time? So I guess we need to start remembering what is it that we've done in school. So let's try to do this. Let's try to look at the question the way that perhaps our high school teacher taught us to. So what do we need to know? What's the kind of formula that we need to use here, or we could use here? Well, it seems like the question is dealing with the distance, the rate, or the speed, and the time. So that formula is going to be distance is equal to rate times time. So maybe all we need is just take the speed, multiply by time, and we can answer the question, how many miles? And we can find the distance. There's a bit of a problem here, though, that we are given the speed from home, then the speed back home, but the time we're given is the time together, going there and going back. So I guess we're missing some variables. Maybe we need to assign a separate variable for the time going there, another variable for the time going back. We know that the times together are going to be t. We can maybe identify some other relationships, like the distances would be the same because that person is walking back home by the same route. So we can build a few equations to try to really get rid of the extra variables and really find the distance that we're looking for. Seems like we still have perhaps too many variables. And if we haven't done this, especially for quite a while, then many people after some time are just going to say, okay, just show me the answer. I give up. Or they just randomly choose an answer that maybe looks the best and move on. Now, if we are comfortable, though, with this type of a theory, maybe we know this formula, maybe we're comfortable and capable of quickly building that equation. Do you think that guarantees that we're going to get this question right? Well, let me tell you from my own experience. We have a lot of people applying to be GMAT tutors, GMAT instructors here at AdmitMaster. And usually when we get this up in application, we would ask them to demonstrate how they approach different questions, because we want to make sure that they really have that strategic understanding of the test and haven't just memorized the formulas. This is one of the questions that we often give to our instructors who try to come and work for us. And I can tell you that the majority of them will be very comfortable writing out this equation, but about half of the people will still make a mistake. Because it seems like we've overcomplicated this problem. Now, you might look at this and say, but wasn't this problem already complicated enough? Maybe that's what we need to do. But see, perhaps instead of trying to complicate this problem even further, maybe we should try to simplify it here a little bit. Let's try to look at this from a higher level perspective, like what's going on here and what we could possibly do. Now, understanding some relationships, some basic relationships between the different measurements like distance, rate, and time is helpful. But that is something we all are very comfortable with, because I would imagine that we all drive a car and maybe have driven a car at some point, right? Or maybe have been in a car. If I want to drive from Toronto to Kingston, and I know it takes me, let's say, 3 hours, and I'm driving at, let's say, 80 kilometers an hour, I know the distance is going to be 240. So that's something we're all comfortable with. I just multiply the speed by time. So whenever we need to find the distance, we need some sort of a speed that will be multiplied by some sort of a time, and that's how we get to the answer. And we always multiply speed by time. That's just a conceptual understanding of how these relationships work. So let me ask you, would it be okay for us to, let's say, add speed and time? Is that okay? Like, can I just say, I'm driving at 80 kilometers an hour for 3 hours, 80 plus 3, that's 83, so the distance from Toronto to Kingston is 83. What do you think? Does that make any sense? 83 what? Kilograms? We cannot add speed and time. So think about this problem more strategically, something like what a person who actually mastered this process will. They're going to look at the answer choices and say, wait a second, could I maybe strategically eliminate some answer choices that I know for sure are not going to be possible? Like maybe answer choice B, who's trying to add speed and time. That's not possible. I cannot add x plus t. X is miles an hour, t is hours. Are there any other answer choices that add speed and time? How about D, x plus y plus t? How about E, y plus t? So now we're down to 2 answer choices only, and notice we haven't yet done any math. That previous way somebody was saying you're already very confused. Yes, that's how a lot of people feel when they read explanation to questions on the GMAT. Because what a lot of people do is they're going to look at this question, they're going to be confused, they'll say, I don't know how to deal with this question, and then they're going to look at the back of the book or the explanation they will see on like a GMAT forum or somewhere. I'll say, okay, now I get it. All I need to do is just create this equation and solve for it. Right, so next time we see this question, that's exactly what we're going to do. Right? That's how things work? Yeah, not really, no. Right? So that's why we need to see if there's a better way, if there's a different approach. And that's what I wanted to demonstrate to you here on this question. So without getting into math, by just understanding what the relationships are, by looking at this problem from more of a strategic perspective, we were able to eliminate 3 out of 5 answer choices. And now we're just down to 2. And guess what? The beauty of having 2 remaining answer choices is one of them has to be right, and that means that another one has to be wrong. So what I can do now is I could pick any one of them, whichever one I want to deal with, and I can just test whether this is what I need. If it is, great. I'm going to pick it and move on to the next question. If it's not correct, great. I'm going to pick another one and move on to the next question. Either way, I'm done. So I'm down to two remaining answers, A and C. Let me just look at answer choice A because it seems like it's a little simpler for me to test. So what does A give us? X divided by Y times T. So what's X divided by Y? That is one speed divided by another speed. It's essentially a ratio of two speeds. Well, what's a ratio? Well, the ratio here is just a number. If I divide one speed by another speed, I don't get a speed, I just get a number. It's like twice as fast, for example. And then if I multiply this by t, I'm going to get hours, which is the time. So answer choice A will give us hours, but we need miles. And that automatically means that C has to be the correct answer. That's the only one that's left. So instead of trying to build an equation and solve for it, what we did here is we used our conceptual understanding of the relationship between distance, rate, and time. We used the process of strategic elimination, and we were able to get down to only one answer, and that's the one that is correct. Answer choice C. So as you could see here, dealing with quantitative reasoning questions isn't really about doing a lot of math. In fact, many people, when they look at the name of this question, problem solving, think that what that means is they have to solve a problem step by step. That's not what problem solving really means. What the name problem solving means is that you want to find the answer using your problem solving skills. And that's exactly what we've done here. So now let's have a look at the verbal reasoning question. Here's a typical critical reasoning question. I'll let you read it for a few seconds, and then again, we'll talk about it. Wow. Okay. Well, let's look at this together. It would be a mistake to say that just because someone is not inclined to do otherwise, she or he does not deserve to be praised for doing what's right. For although it is true that we do consider people, especially virtuous, if they successfully resist the desire to do what is wrong, they're certainly no less virtuous if they have succeeded in extinguishing all such desires. What is this even trying to say? And we're trying to get into a business school, so do I really need to understand all of this? Well, I guess I do, because to get into a business school, I guess I need to understand ethics, right? Maybe. We'll get to this in just a moment. But notice, though, that there's actually a question at the end of the passage. And the question is asking us, the statement above in boldface plays which of the following roles in the ethicist's argument? I wonder how many of you actually read this first to try to understand, what am I actually going to be asked to do here in this passage? Now, do I really need to understand this passage and maybe write an essay about doing what's right? Or do I just really need to focus on answering this question? Now, this is just like in quant, a multiple choice exam, so there are 5 options. Now, let's have a look at these options. It is a claim for which the argument attempts to provide justification. It makes an observation that according to the argument is insufficient to justify the claim that the argument concludes as false. It is a faulty claim, the acceptance of which the argument contends is a primary obstacle to some people's having an adequate conception of virtue. It is, according to the argument, a commonly held opinion that is nevertheless false. And it reports an observation the argument claims as false, and according to the argument is sufficient to demonstrate the falsehood of the claim that the argument concludes as false. I don't know about you, but the answer choices seem even more confusing than the passage itself. And you would notice that the answer choices aren't really about ethics. So perhaps instead of trying to focus on understanding all of these ethics, what we need to do is really try to focus on answering the question. What kind of a role does this statement play, the boldface statement? So maybe perhaps in order for us to understand what kind of a role it could play, we need to know what are some of the different parts of the argument. And maybe also we need to focus not so much on understanding what these say, but rather on what they do. So instead of focusing on the words we don't understand, perhaps, like resist the desire to do what's wrong, or how what does that mean in the context of this passage, perhaps we need to really understand what each statement in this passage does. So let's focus on these structural keywords, the keywords that tell us how this argument is put together. You would notice that the essence begins by saying it would be a mistake to say something. Whatever that is, somebody made a mistake, and that person is claiming that these other people made a mistake or are saying something that's not correct. This is what we call a main claim or main conclusion or main hypothesis of the argument. Somebody is wrong, the ethicist is right. Now, in an argument, if we're claiming that somebody is wrong and we are right, we better explain why. So that's why, in addition to the claim or conclusion in the argument, we need to have what's called the evidence in the argument. So what's the evidence? It's something that actually explains why we believe that. So why would we believe that somebody is wrong? Well, it's because of what follows in the argument. In fact, that statement in bold was part of the support to that claim, was part of why the author believes that these people are wrong. And most specifically, the author is saying, yes, this is true, this may be true, but you're still wrong. So in a way, they agree with that bolded statement. They're saying, yeah, that's actually true. But maybe you have misinterpreted it. Maybe these people didn't really understand how to use this information to make a proper conclusion. So despite the fact that they agree with that bolded statement, they disagree with those people. So what we have just learned is that that bolded statement is the evidence or the support to the main claim that it would be a mistake. And most specifically, the author agrees with that particular statement in bold, because the author said, for although it is true. Notice that we haven't talked at all about ethics. We just broke down the structure of an argument. So now let's have a look at the answer choices. When I teach this in a live class where we can interact, the most commonly chosen answer is answer choice C. C says it is a faulty claim. Because indeed, the author was talking about somebody making a faulty claim or being incorrect. But the question was asking us about the statement in bold. And we know that that statement started with the words for although it is true. So guess what? If the author said that something is true, could we say that it's a faulty claim? No, we can't. No, the author said it's true, so it cannot be faulty. So answer choice C is automatically incorrect. I don't have to keep reading it. I can stop once I see it is faulty. Let's have a look at the next, actually D. It is according to the argument a commonly held opinion that is nevertheless false. The author said it's true. So false? No, that also will not be the answer that we need. E. It reports an observation that the argument claims is false. Again, I can eliminate this because I know the author said it's true. So now I'm down to two options only, A and B. How many of these two do I have to read in order to pick the correct answer? Just one, right? Because I've eliminated three answer choices. Now I'm down to two. So let's be lazy here a bit and let's read the shorter answer choice. It is a claim for which the argument attempts to provide justification. Is that part in bold the main claim of the argument? No, it wasn't. The main claim was the first sentence, that these people are incorrect. So that means that A is not the correct answer, and by the process of elimination, B will be the right answer. At this point, we don't even need to understand B, and we certainly don't need to understand what this ethics person is saying. So as you could see here, what the GMAT really is testing is your ability to work with sometimes unfamiliar situations and make the right decisions within a short period of time under pressure. So that is what makes this test very different from the majority of the other tests that you may have ever done in your life. Because the majority of the tests that you have done were knowledge-based tests. For example, let's say you are writing a final exam in economics. Well, you need to know some economics, right? Or biology or history or whatever the test is in. Whereas the GMAT isn't about knowing business or isn't about knowing ethics. It's really about demonstrating these, what the GMAT calls higher order reasoning skills. Now, the GRE is quite similar, though the GRE tests a slightly different set of skills. It's a bit more about your academic ability because you have less time and you need to work a little bit faster. And the questions are a bit more academic and a bit less about critical thinking. But it's also a very competitive test. Many people often ask me, which test is easier, GMAT or GRE? Asking this question is kind of a little unfair because when it comes to the standardized competitive tests, there's actually no such thing as an easier or harder test. Because if a lot of people pass this test, right? So for example, somebody could say, well, a driving test is easy, but the airplane test, flying an airplane or helicopter is hard. Why? Because, a lot of people pass the driving test and not a lot of people pass the helicopter test, right? So that could be easy or hard. But these tests, both the GMAT and the GRE, are scales-based tests. There's no pass and fail. So you're just competing against other people. It's a bulk of the exam. So if the test were easier, it would be easier for everyone, but you still need to be in the top 10%, top 15%. So that's why there's actually no such thing as an easier or harder test. The GRE does test a bit more knowledge. For example, in the GRE, there's geometry and there's vocabulary. So these are things you need to memorize. The GMAT is a bit more about the skill, but they're both hard and they both require preparation. Now, specifically when it comes to the GMAT, we need to start reframing our approach to the tests. And the common way to think about the test is that I need to read a book and memorize what's in the book. And we think like that because we've done this so many times before, because we believe that knowledge is power. And if I know something, I'm going to be powerful. I learn more, I'm going to be more successful. And maybe our parents told us this, and our teachers in school. But this was, ladies and gentlemen, before we had Google, ChatGPT, AI, or whatever it is. Knowledge isn't power. It's helpful to be knowledgeable, but it's not enough. What's power right now is the skill. So how do you develop that skill? And I love analogies. So one of the analogies I like to use is that preparing for the test is kind of like learning a new sport. Do you think Michael Phelps necessarily read a lot of books about swimming and that's why he was so successful in the Olympic Games and everywhere else? Probably not, right? What he did is he learned how to do it, had coaching, he continued improving, and he got better and better, and that's why he was the best. So whenever you're thinking about this kind of a test, whether the GMAT or the GRE, think about how you would structure learning a new skill or a new sport. And I'm actually going to show you how you can do that. Because there is a process that you could use to learn any new skill. And the process that I wanted to show you is going to be based on the analogy of driving a car. Because most of us have learned how to drive a car, so sometimes it's a little bit easier for us to associate with. So how did we learn how to drive a car? And again, I'm going to use what we normally do here in the province of Ontario. Many of the other provinces and states in the US have a very similar process. That process consists of 3 steps. Step number 1, and if you're in Ontario, this will be your G1 license. So what is G1? That is knowing your theory. You need to know some of the foundations. When driving a car, that just meant knowing the colors of the signals, knowing the different road signs. On the GMAT, that means having the right foundational knowledge. For example, you need to be able to separate the facts from opinions. You need to understand what is a prime number, how to prime factorize, how to convert between a fraction and a decimal, how to solve a quadratic equation. Now, these are just the foundations. It's not something that will make you a confident test taker by itself, but without it, it's going to be really challenging to do well on the test. So that should be your step 1. Just like when you learn how to drive a car, your step 1 will be to really rebuild these foundations. The good news is you've all graduated from high school since you're thinking of doing an MBA. So you've learned this at some point. You just need to rebuild these. So how do you do that? Well, there are a couple of ways to do this. First of all, come to our refresher classes, right? And just a very quick plug. Our math and verbal refresher classes will help you rebuild these foundations. So go to admitmaster.com and you can register for these classes. When you learn these foundations, make sure you also apply them. So there's a variety of different platforms and books that can help you practice what you've learned. For example, how do you practice converting from a fraction to a percent? You need to be able to do this really quickly on the test. You need to be able to do mental math. You need to be able to prime factorize a number within just a few seconds. So practicing and not just memorizing formulas is still going to be important because both the GMAT and the GRE don't allow you to bring the formula sheet. Right? You need to, and they won't just ask you what is the formula for that. Just like you've seen in the distance rate time question today, they will ask you to actually apply that and understand that. If you decide to come and study with us here at AdmitMaster, we are actually going to walk you through all of these steps. And the step 1 will be giving you these resources so you don't have to look for them. Some of these resources are available online, somewhere for free, but some of these resources are actually premium resources that actually cost either yourself or they cost us. If you come to our program, we're going to supply these resources so that you can actually practice. There will be videos, there will be some adaptive exercises so that you can actually practice, prime factorizing numbers or solving quadratic equations really quickly. And that's going to help you get your brain warmed up for learning some of these more advanced strategies, and it'll also help you eliminate this anxiety that's going to come from forgetting some of the things back from our school. So that was step 1, rebuild these foundations. Step 2 is you need to start mastering these strategic patterns on the test. Because just like some of the questions that I've shown you today, so that question about Aaron jogging from home, that strategy that I was showing you, it was actually strategic elimination based on what's called the dimensional analysis. It's an amazing strategy that helps you deal with many of these questions. Now, many people don't even know this strategy exists. Because sometimes when we approach the test, just like when we approach how we learn how to drive a car. Maybe you've been in a car or you remember yourself being in a car for the first time. I certainly remember this. I was terrified. Even though I've been in a car, my dad was driving and my friends were driving. The first time I was behind the wheel, like, oh my gosh, where do I even start? There are so many things I need to take care of here, right? How do I even understand what's step one? How do I memorize all of those things? And there seemed like there's like a gazillion different steps to driving a car. So what really helped there is for somebody to show you in a very calm way, somebody who's experienced, ideally somebody who's taught many people before, they're going to say, Sergey, this is how you can do it. Okay, do this first, look in the mirrors, start driving, and don't worry. They kept us safe, they kept us motivated, and they gave us this feedback. So that if we do something that we shouldn't do, or we're not supposed to do, then they will immediately tell us, okay, do something different. And that's what helps us study very efficiently. Now, many people, when they prepare for the GMAT, they just load themselves with a bunch of books and they start doing a lot of questions. But this is kind of like getting in a car and starting to drive without actually knowing how to. And that's why a lot of people, when they prepare for the GMAT, will actually give up. Let me give you some statistics. About 13 million people every year explore preparing for the GMAT and going to a business school. Of these 13 million people, about 2 million people will actually begin studying for the test. They'll buy a book, they'll download the practice test, they'll start investing some time and a bit of money into preparing for the test. Of these 2 million people, only 5% will actually end up doing the test. And of these, only a tenth will get the score that's going to be strong enough, not just for the application, but also for the scholarships and for recruitment. For example, I don't know if you know that, but if you want to go and work for any of the top management consulting firms, the companies that pay a lot of money, you would need a score in the top 10%. So a lot of people, as we go through the process, they give up simply because it's too hard. And it's too hard simply because they haven't learned these strategies first. So learning these strategies up front, trying them out, recognizing that at first you might not be very comfortable applying these strategies, you might be making some mistakes. So for somebody to show you where things are going wrong will help you go through this process a lot more efficiently. And that's what we did when we learned how to drive a car. And if you are in this province of Ontario, this is when you got your G2 license. You were at this point, okay. And then finally, you're going to need to train under pressure because you're going to need to practice a lot. And that's when we got our full G license, because the more you practice, the more you're going to be comfortable driving. And on the GMAT, there's something very similar. If you practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. If you practice wrong, you reinforce mistakes. So you want to make sure that as you practice, you give yourself this coaching, have an opportunity to have somebody to coach you as well. So where do we go from here, ladies and gentlemen? Well, I'd like to encourage you to explore different options to prepare. We at Admit Master have a guided program that takes you from start to finish in this entire journey. And we call this the GMAT Mastery All-Inclusive Coaching Program. That includes live classes, free course retakes, and coaching until you are done with your test. This is what most of our clients choose. There are other options as well, but this is the most popular one because it literally guarantees you're going to get the score that you need or that you want, because we guide you through this process from start to finish. So I'd like to encourage you to go to admitmaster.com/offer, and there'll be a lot of resources that will help you get started. You can start by taking a practice test. This will give you an assessment of where you want to, where you're starting from. Book a consultation with myself. Make sure that you reach out to Geoff and the team as well to have an assessment of how your profile looks like and where you stand, what kind of a score you might want to get. If you're the kind of person who is just saying, I need to make sure that I'm properly investing in this process, then join our live classes, and you can find the schedule on our website as well. If you're just exploring, come to our free refresher class. The next one is on March 18th. We're going to dig much deeper into the verbal section. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure spending this very short 45 minutes with you. I know Geoff is looking at me right now because it's 2 o'clock. Thanks for being here today, and really, it's always a pleasure to speak with Geoff, with your candidates, and really help them move the needle in the application. Back over to you, Geoff.
Thank you, Sergey, and thank you to AdmitMaster for prepping our applicants for the rigors of the GMAT test. And as I said 45 minutes ago, I've had feedback from students and alumni that have definitely benefited from AdmitMaster's tutelage over the years. So perhaps you see yourself in those shoes in the weeks and months ahead. So thank you very much to those of you who have tuned in for today's webinar in live setting. This recording, if you registered, will be sent directly to you, so you'll be able to review it if there's something that you missed, if there's information that you'd like to review. Lots of great content there. On the last slide that I showed, there was the website, smithqueens, all one word, .com/MBA. Introduce yourself, and Beth, our application advisor, will reach out to you quickly to get your application started. And we look forward to seeing it come forward in the weeks and months ahead. Until next time, thanks so much for your interest and see you soon. Bye for now.